Arjun and Anaya seemed like the perfect couple, a newlywed dream in the heart of Paris, but behind closed doors, a shocking secret would turn their fairy tale marriage into a nightmare of betrayal and violence. Arjun had always lived his life by the book. Born into a respected middle-class family in New Delhi, he was the kind of son parents proudly boasted about to their neighbors. With a stable career in software engineering and a reputation for being hardworking, he was ready for the next step, marriage. His family believed it was time he settled down, and as tradition dictated, relatives stepped in to arrange introductions with suitable brides. Among the many names that came forward, one stood out, Anaya. She was described as graceful, soft-spoken, and cultured, with just the right balance of modernity and tradition. Photographs showed a woman with striking features, and every detail seemed perfect. The first meeting between the families took place in a decorated living room filled with the aroma of fresh flowers and cardamom tea. Anaya appeared in a pastel sari, her presence delicate and composed. To everyone, she seemed the ideal bride, the kind who would not only compliment Arjun, but also bring honor to his family. She answered questions with humility, her voice carrying both charm and innocence. For Arjun, the decision came easily. Within weeks, preparations for their wedding began, filling both households with music, chatter, and excitement. The wedding itself was nothing short of grand. Guests traveled from far and wide to witness the union, and the event was celebrated with rituals that sparkled with color and devotion. Bright marigold garlands draped the entrances, priests recited chants that echoed under the lights, and relatives whispered about how fortunate Arjun was to have found such a bride. When Anaya walked down the aisle in her red bridal attire, shimmering with gold embroidery, she captured every gaze. Cameras flashed, children ran around in laughter, and elders nodded with approval. For the families, it was a day that symbolized prosperity and harmony. After the vows, the couple received blessings, gifts, and promises of happiness. Friends praised Arjun for his luck, while Anaya won admiration for her composure and beauty. As they sat side by side during the rituals, their smiles painted the image of a perfect beginning. The bond seemed unshakable, one that promised a life filled with companionship and mutual respect. When Arjun later received a work offer in Paris, it felt like destiny had given them an even brighter future. A marriage followed by a new life in one of the most romantic cities in the world. It was a story others envied. As the couple boarded their flight, their families waved with tears of joy, convinced that the young bride and groom were stepping into a dream life. Yet beneath the surface of celebration, a truth waited quietly, hidden in shadows that no one had thought to question. Paris welcomed Arjun and Anaya like a dream carved out of postcards. Their small apartment near the Seine was not lavish, but it held a warmth that felt new and full of promise. From their balcony, they could see rooftops stretching across the city, cafes bustling with conversations, and the distant hum of traffic that never seemed to sleep. For Anaya, every street corner felt like a discovery, every bridge a story waiting to be told. She would spend afternoons walking along cobblestone lanes, breathing in the scent of fresh bread from bakeries, and letting the golden light of Paris wrap around her like a gentle embrace. Arjun's days quickly fell into a routine. His new job demanded long hours, coding sessions, and endless meetings with international clients. He carried the pressure silently, believing it was his duty to build a stable foundation for their new life. To him, Anaya was the comfort waiting at home, the person who would make the struggles of the day feel lighter. In the evenings, they often shared dinner by the window, talking about the sights Anaya had explored, and the small details that made her fall in love with the city. Her neighbors saw them as polite and private, occasionally exchanging greetings in the hallway, but never inviting too much attention. Yet beneath the surface of their life abroad, Arjun began to notice small things that did not add up. Anaya avoided long phone calls when he was around, and she often deflected personal questions about her past. At times, she seemed restless, her gaze lingering too long out the window, as if she carried unspoken thoughts she dared not share. Arjun brushed off the unease at first, convincing himself that every marriage needed time to adjust. Still, Paris became both enchanting and unsettling. While the city embraced them with its charm, cracks began to form quietly in the foundation of their relationship. Arjun's colleagues praised his hard work, but he often caught himself distracted, wondering about the silences that grew between him and his wife. On some nights, when he returned earlier than expected, he sensed a tension in the apartment, as if Anaya had been caught off guard. Though she never faltered in her role as a devoted partner, her guarded demeanor left unanswered questions hanging in the air. The city of love had given them a beautiful setting for their marriage, but inside their home, mystery was beginning to weave its way into their story. What appeared to be a perfect life on the outside was slowly becoming a puzzle, one that Arjun felt compelled to solve. The night Arjun stumbled upon the hidden documents was one he would never forget. He had been searching through drawers for an old receipt when his hand brushed against a folder tucked carefully beneath layers of clothes. At first he thought little of it, assuming it was filled with mundane paperwork. But as he opened it, the contents stopped him cold. The folder held medical records, identification papers, and fragments of a life that had been carefully reconstructed. The name on the documents did not match the one on his marriage certificate. Even more unsettling were hospital files that revealed surgeries and treatments that told a truth Arjun was never meant to uncover. Shock washed over him in waves. His heart pounded as he read line after line, each word dismantling the reality he had believed in. The woman he had married, the bride who had been celebrated with songs and blessings, was not biologically a woman. The truth was hidden behind years of effort, decisions, and an identity built with painstaking care. Arjun's hands trembled as he tried to make sense of it. His mind reeled with images of their wedding, their journey to Paris, the shared meals, the whispered promises of a future together. All of it now felt like a fragile illusion ready to collapse. As he placed the documents back into the folder, his thoughts spiraled into chaos. He felt betrayed, deceived, and stripped of the certainty that had once guided him. Every moment with Anaya replayed in his head with new meaning, twisted by the discovery. The long silences, the evasive answers, the restless nights, they all seemed to point toward the secret he now held in his hands. It was as if the puzzle pieces he had ignored for months had finally fallen into place, forming a picture he did not want to see. That night, Arjun could not sleep. He sat in the dim light of their apartment, staring at the documents over and over, hoping he had misunderstood them, but the truth was undeniable. The life he thought he was living was built on a foundation of lies. What had started as a dream of love and companionship had turned into something darker, something he could not reconcile with the image of the bride he had brought into his home. From that moment on, nothing between them could ever remain the same. The days that followed the discovery were marked by silence, heavy and suffocating. Arjun carried his rage like a storm waiting to break, and the once warm atmosphere of the apartment turned cold. The gentle routines they had shared, meals by the window, quiet walks in the evening, were replaced with an air of suspicion and resentment. Anaya sensed the shift immediately. Though he said nothing, his eyes carried an intensity that made her uneasy. She began to move cautiously, trying to anticipate his moods, trying to mask the growing tension that filled every corner of their home. It did not take long for the silence to fracture. The anger Arjun had bottled up erupted in sudden bursts, first in harsh gestures, then in violence. What started as moments of uncontrollable rage became patterns of cruelty. Neighbors occasionally heard sounds through the walls, loud thuds, hurried footsteps, muffled cries, but the noises faded as quickly as they came. Some dismissed them as arguments common to newlyweds, while others chose to ignore what they suspected, unwilling to involve themselves in private matters. Anaya tried to hide the evidence of her suffering. She covered bruises with long sleeves, concealed swelling with scarves, and painted her face carefully to disguise the marks. To the outside world, she still appeared composed, the elegant woman admired for her grace. But behind closed doors, her days were filled with fear. She avoided confrontation, kept her voice soft, and walked on eggshells in her own home, praying that the storm would pass, but it never did. Each episode of violence only grew worse, fueled by Arjun's growing obsession with the betrayal he believed he had suffered. Nights became the most dangerous. When the streets outside grew quiet and shadows lengthened across the apartment, the walls seemed to hold the echoes of his fury. Anaya endured in silence, torn between protecting her secret and surviving the wrath it had unleashed. One night, the breaking point arrived. The violence escalated beyond anything that had come before. The apartment filled with chaos, objects thrown, voices raised, and the unmistakable sounds of a struggle. A neighbor, unable to ignore the noise any longer, finally reached for the phone and called the authorities. For the first time since their arrival in Paris, someone outside their fragile world would step inside. What they would find behind the door was a truth darker than anyone could have imagined. When the police arrived at the apartment, the scene that greeted them was chaotic and grim. Furniture had been overturned, shards of glass littered the floor, and the air was heavy with the tension of violence that had just unfolded. In the corner, Anaya sat trembling, her face swollen and her body covered in bruises that told the story of what she had endured. Her eyes, filled with both terror and exhaustion, followed the officers as they moved quickly through the room. Arjun was restrained within minutes, his rage replaced by a hollow expression that revealed nothing of the storm he had unleashed moments earlier. The ambulance arrived soon after, and paramedics tended to Anaya with quiet urgency. She was alive, but the physical and emotional scars ran deep. For the first time, she allowed herself to speak of the truth she had concealed for years. Her carefully guarded identity, once hidden behind layers of secrecy, was now laid bare to investigators. Every word she spoke was noted down, each detail painting a picture of a life built on fear of exposure and the desperate need for acceptance. News of the assault spread quickly through Paris. Headlines seized upon the shocking elements of the case: the Indian couple who had once appeared so perfect, the hidden past of the bride, and the violent unraveling of a marriage that had begun with grandeur and joy. Media outlets dissected every aspect of the story, fueling debates on identity, deception, and the dangers of unchecked anger. What had once been a private tragedy was now a public spectacle, sparking conversations far beyond the walls of their apartment. For Arjun, the consequences were immediate and severe. He faced criminal charges of assault, his career in ruins, and his reputation destroyed. The image of the respectable professional and devoted husband was shattered, replaced with the label of an abuser whose actions had shocked an entire city. The legal system moved swiftly, and his once bright future narrowed to the confines of a prison cell. Anaya, though physically safe under police protection, was left to rebuild her life from the fragments of deception and pain. She became a figure both pitied and scrutinized, caught between sympathy for her suffering and controversy over her hidden past. What began as a marriage celebrated in India had ended in betrayal, violence, and headlines across Europe. It stood as a haunting reminder that secrets, no matter how deeply buried, carry the power to destroy lives when they finally come to light.